Welcome, listeners, to The Flip Side, a pretty new podcast that we've started on Northeast Valley News. We're experimenting with talking into our microphones differently, so that's why I'm fumbling around to begin the podcast. Thank you for tuning in. You're listening to us on either NEVN FM on Spotify and Anchor, or you're listening to us directly from our site, nevalleynews.org. Whichever way you're tuning in, we appreciate you. Today is Tuesday, February 21st. We had the Super Bowl a couple of weeks ago. We're going to talk about some sports-related things related to football on the second half of the show, which we call the flip side of sports. The flip side of news is what we're going to talk about first. For those of you who have not listened to the podcast before, the flip side is a journalistic approach to looking at the news. We're not going to only look at what's on the outside, but what's on the flip side as well. Last week, we had some experiments done with artificial intelligence. Bing AI and Google AI. The Bing AI is a Microsoft thing, and Google AI are competing with each other for superiority in the artificial intelligence world, apparently. Last week, we had some demonstrations of artificial intelligence and what it might turn out to be able to do for us. Marcus, you have been following this a little bit longer than I have, for sure, and perhaps longer than Sophia as well.
For sure.
Why don't you catch us up a little bit on what's going on? We've had something, there was a thing before we were talking about in pre-production that was earlier called Chat GPT. That came out at the end of November. That was the first thing we had. The stuff they tested last week is a little bit different, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of research, all of it on TikTok. Just joking. No, but
Facebook research.
Yep. No, but it's the same stuff that's been around. Like, you talk to Siri, and I'm in the mood for Italian food tonight. Can you give me some Italian restaurants nearby? Like, you're talking to a person.
Oh, okay. So we've been unwittingly using this for years then.
Yeah, and I still don't fully understand completely what the final product's going to be, but it seems like it's going to be essentially kind of like an Amazon Echo or a Siri, but even deeper. It's like your buddy that you talk to. Hey, what's my favorite burger place again? I forget the address.
I think Alexa does that.
And it's going to be even deeper.
Help me out. That's what help me out, personal assistant.
But I guess people were freaking out because it's so unhinged. Bing is so unhinged. It's gaslighting people, threatening suicide, and kind of just being like a jerk sometimes. But also, I think unhinged is the right word. It's just being straight up unhinged.
Well, right. And you said, Marcus, you said that a lot of the quote unquote personality that these artificial intelligence machines, I guess we can call them,
people
are they artificially intelligent people. They're gaining most of this most of their speak and those sort of things from our own text messages and communications and things. So they're using
unhinged.
Right. They're using human ideas, which are, as we know, completely wacky.
Yes.
So there's this new artificial intelligence surge of interest in this technology. And I'm sure that there's good that can come out of it. But I mean, what might be some of the things that come out of it that we're not anticipating that could be dangerous? For instance, Americans are chronically lazy. I mean, we know this. If we can get away with doing something and not putting any effort into it, I think we're going to try to do that. One of my primary concerns with this is that humankind in general is going to kind of just stop thinking for itself if it has some sort of mechanism to do our thinking for us. We're just going to give up on it. What do you What do you, I mean, as young people, I mean, this has to be there. You have to have ideas about, where this might go. What do you think could be some of the consequences from this?
Idiocracy.
Yeah, I think our thought process is just going to start really slowing down. And a lot of people, I think, are going to get more impatient. I think the young people have the tendency to want things like right away.
Right. We
or
want
They
answers.
want answers right away. They don't want to put the time into it.
Right.
I
We don't
think,
want to write a paper, I mean, we want something, we just want to tell something to write a paper for us and have it do it.
yeah.
Yeah, I think the people who want to think are going to keep on thinking.
Yeah.
But some people would say, the ones who don't want to think, let them not think. I'm not saying that's how I think, but
Yeah. But I think there'll be a pretty good split.
Yeah.
Hopefully the thinkers stick around and for
'Cause
those who don't.
anything that makes life easier it doesn't just make you stupider or lazier. It can also be a great tool to learn more.
But if you abuse
It could be.
though, I
It
feel
could
like
be.
if you
Right.
abuse the fact that it could be easy and you always just want to take the easy way out.
Right.
It's like, oh, well, okay, like you're not doing anything at that point.
How about beyond that? Let's get even a little darker. Is it possible? I mean, is it within the realm of possibility that these artificially intelligent beings are going to eventually figure out that humans are going to ruin the world? I mean, that's where we're headed. We're humans destroy stuff. That's what we do. And I'm afraid that these artificially intelligent beings are going to catch on. Are going to sooner or later are going to catch on that humans are actually bad for the world, which we obviously are. And it'll just destroy humankind. I mean,
why would an AI feel obligated to save the world?
I'm not sure why, because they want to continue their existence, perhaps.
What if we just make
they'll
them
learn.
think we're daddy, like humans are
Just
the
trick
world.
them.
Humans are the world.
I don't know that tricking artificial intelligence is going to work.
Trick them into what though? Because you could argue that something like saving the world is like a moral like fiber that only exists within humans. Like would an AI really feel obligated to save anything?
I guess it would depend on what it learns or what it wants to learn, or if it wants to continue being.
Yeah. I would see it more like kind of like the basics of life: cell eats cell, dog eats dog, where it's like the AI would just take over, not to save the world, just because it wants to take over, maybe.
Right, because humans are stupid and they're much more smart.
It wants to be top dog.
Right. It wants to be more important than
Speaking
humans.
of which, it'll keep the dogs around, probably, just not humans.
Right. Dogs aren't trying to ruin the world. No.
Dogs are the best.
Doggies will survive.
Exist.
Sophia,
love dogs.
Do you have anything else other than your love of dogs to add to?
No, that's it.
Dogs are safe from AI.
And
Thank goodness.
I want to point out too, not just laziness, but emotional crutches where this is already happening. People replace their dead spouses with an AI chatbot.
That's right.
I think it's all about the mind and psychology behind it. I mean, depending on the person, if you don't have that mental willpower to kind of keep your stuff straight, you could get sucked into everything super easily.
Right. I think AI is going to eventually just trick us. And then right. And then we'll be a slave to artificial intelligence.
How do you tax AI?
You can't. That's the thing. You can't do it.
Then it's got to be illegal.
Yeah.
Now.
The government will put a stop to it because they won't be able to tax it, but they probably will weaponize it.
Yeah.
So our government is probably all about artificial intelligence, just waiting until it gets really dangerous and they can take over and weaponize it.
Yeah. Like psyops against the people.
Right. That's what we're going to wind up with. Let's move on. Let's move on to something less dark. The flip side of sports. Let's move on to that for the second half of the show. This last weekend was the big debut of the third reincarnation of the XFL. So if our listeners will remember, the XFL was a thing quite a long time ago, probably 30 years ago. It was a thing, maybe 40 years ago, where the WWF, which is what it was called then, which is now WWE, but WWF, which was owned and has been owned and may still be owned by Jim McMahon. Vince McMahon, sorry, Jim McMahon. He was a quarterback for the Chicago Bears. Vince McMahon was not a quarterback for the Chicago Bears. Vince, anyway, started out he wanted to do this fusion between wrestling and football, and they started the XFL. And it had a bunch of really crazy, dangerous rules that were much, much different than any other football we'd ever seen. Now, the second time that the XFL came back was just prior to the pandemic. They started in February of 2019, and the pandemic obviously, well, not obviously, hit in March of 2019. So they were about 6 weeks into their season when the rug got yanked out from underneath them. And they were doing quite well, to be honest. It was popular. It was a popular league. There was a lot of fans. It was a great vibe. And unfortunately, they just couldn't play anymore because of the pandemic. So this is third time as a charm, okay? The XFL started last weekend. The owners of this league are a woman, Danny Garcia. She is the owner and CEO. One of the part owners and a long time business partner and rumored ex-spouse,
Yes.
Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, as Marcus knows him as.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's actually Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
The Rock.
The Rock. Sorry.
He's the only one.
He's the only Rock. He's the only Rock person. He is also a part owner, and he's sort of the face of the league, more or less, because he was a former player and he's ripped and everything, and everybody loves The Rock. So he's sort of the person, behind trying to sort of make it popular, I guess you would. He was, the face.
Mhm.
So this XFL startup again, there features inexpensive tickets. I think we went through some of the ticket prices. They're in the low 20s. So it's very affordable to go to a game. It has helped us immeasurably with the football withdrawal after the Super Bowl is over. There's always this sort of extreme anxiety for football fans because they don't, they're going to be missing their favorite game for several months. And that's sort of the surface of it. It's the flip side of this is that it's another chance for professional football players to compete in the sport that they love and want to try to make a career out of playing. Now, and they're obviously not getting paid as well as NFL players, but it's a way to make a living, and it's a way that players that weren't able to make it into the NFL for one reason or another, maybe they were injured, maybe they were having personal issues, maybe their family situation didn't allow them to be drafted. I mean, there's 100 reasons why a completely good athlete didn't make it into the NFL. It's a very, very small sample size. I mean,
most definitely.
100%. Right. There's no minor leagues for the NFL. So I'm seeing this as number one, a chance for more professional football players to be involved in the game. And another thing that is, I think that's very important about the XFL is that it's a showcase for different rules.
Mhm.
Okay. The NFL is highly established. They're kind of stodgy. They're not going to experiment, quote unquote, with different rules. And that's one of the reasons why I think the XFL and the USFL, to be completely honest, are very, very important in a way other than giving a second chance. So the primary rule differences between the XFL and the NFL are basically three. The overtime rules are, if our listeners will remember, or if they remember from the USFL or the last rendition of the XFL, the overtime is a shootout, what's called a shootout, rather than sort of a conventional overtime where the teams keep playing until somebody scores and the other team doesn't. So the teams have run a series of plays from their opponent's 5-yard line and try to score, and they go back and forth until a team wins. So it's actually very exciting. The other difference is in the clock. The clock rules are different. The clock runs. It will restart after incomplete passes or an out of bounds play as soon as the ball is respotted. There's not sort of this play stoppage. The play clock is also 5 seconds less than in the NFL. So these rules were devised to speed up the game a little bit, to make it less than 3 hours.
I think that's the biggest one, speeding up the game.
Yeah.
Because no one likes
That's
how long it's
really right. It keeps I think it keeps the fans engaged more. There's not as much downtime in between plays. There's not enough, there's not so much sort of just time when there's not anything going on. Those are the clock rules. And then the other thing that they have that I think is extremely innovative is that there's no kicking. There's no point after try kicks in the XFL. You have 3 choices. If you score a touchdown, you can go for a 1-point play from the 2-yard line. Your opponent's 2-yard line, that is. You're not there. You don't have to go 98 yards for a point. So you can go for 1 point from the 2 points from the 5, which is the same place where the overtime shootout starts, a 5-yard line. Or if you want to try to get 3 points, not 1, not 2, but 3, you can start from the 10. You can run a play from the 10-yard line.
Best one. That actually happened in one of the first.
Oh,
games.
did you see? Did that happen on one of the first games? Okay.
I wish I remember the team. I saw on TikTok.
So you have
news source.
So your main news source. So you have these options in the XFL to bring more strategy into the game. There's not a lot of strategy between, do you kick a 1-point PAT in the NFL or do you go for 2? There's pretty much ground rules for that, and they don't ever change. So this brings a lot of other things into the game. Marcus, you obviously through Twitter and other sources, and maybe you watched some of the games.
Only TikTok.
I did watch a couple of the games, or tried to watch as much of a couple of them as I could.
I think it was St. Louis, and they did the 4th down.
Oh, they did. Okay,
not the 4th down, the 3-point
conversion.
conversion.
Right. The some of the other there's another the extra possession rules are different in the XFL. If you want to try to get the ball back, you don't have to kick an onside kick. You can try if you want.
They also did that too. That's
right.
The same team. It was actually a wicked comeback.
Oh, really?
They came back from a deficit that would have been impossible to come back from in normal football, but because of the rules, they came back.
Right, because of the new rules. If you're down a certain number of points, you have the option of going for either an onside kick, or you can run a play. You can run a 4th and 15 play from your end of the field. So if you if you goof up, it's fairly catastrophic.
I think they hit like a 40-yard pass off that play, the 4th and 15.
Oh, the 4th and 15 conversion.
And within like a minute and a half, they overcame. I don't want to put out a number, but it was like 11 or 12-point deficit.
And that's adding a whole nother layer to it.
It was pretty awesome.
Right. So what was yours? I mean, Marcus, as you were watching the games or catching up with them on TikTok or however you did, what were the rules, the different rules that you saw that you think are innovative and have some credence that might be adopted by the NFL?
Both the rules we just mentioned, they're a lot of fun. But here's the thing: I don't think it should, or it's going to go to the NFL. Because for one, it won't. But for one, I'm pretty sure American football, the National Football League, plays American football. At that point, it's no longer American football. The rules are, you can't just change the rules of the sport. I think there's a commission and all that. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is the NFL doesn't.
You don't think they're going to have enough leeway to change?
I think
they did in the NFL's defense. They did change their overtime rule. They have changed their overtime rules in the last several years.
I'm thinking like only if it pertains to player health, then they make a serious effort to change it.
Right. And I think that's where the XFL is doing a lot better now than they were, obviously, in the first rendition of it was fraught with all sort of very dangerous rules. Yeah. This reincarnation of it, the current one, seems to be quite a lot focused on player safety. So I mean, at least they're giving lip service.
You know what I like to see in the XFL is women players.
There we go. They do have They do have female officials in the XFL. I think every game has a female.
So does the
official.
NFL. But we can have.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
Women players. We had a couple women players on my high school football team, and I remember we were the only high school that did that. And I was like, "What a precedent! Why not? Right. If XFL has a woman CEO and they're progressive, and they're new, and everything's changing,
right?
2020,
that seems reasonable to me for sure." Well, thanks everyone for listening, and I would like to thank. I let me figure out who's in the studio. I'd like to thank Marcus Reichley and Sophia Linkous for being here today. My name is Ole Olafson. I'm back in the realm of reality now. Thanks for being here. And then for our listeners, obviously, thank you for tuning in. We'd like you to follow us on social media if you can, on TikTok and Twitter. Tune into NE Valley News. If you're into Insta or Facebook, Northeast Valley News org, all spelled out. Also, check out our site at nevalleynews.org. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And until next week.
Wait, before we go, who's everyone's XFL's team? Mine is Roughnecks for sure.
I think I'm with you on the Roughnecks.
You got to pick one based off the name right now.
The snake.
The Vipers. Oh, the Sea Dragons.
Now
Seattle
you can
Sea
never change
Dragons.
teams ever again.
Okay,
You're stuck on Sea
you're
Dragons.
locked into the Sea Dragons. Thanks for checking us out, everyone. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and check out those XFL games starting on Thursday this week. We've got a game on Thursday, so
Who's playing?
Oh,
I'm not sure who's on the Thursday games. Sophia has her finger on the
I'll be
pulse
watching.
of the XFL.
Oh,
The Thursday game
Thursday,
is
the 23rd. The Battlehawks and the Sea Dragons.
there. You go.
What's your
So
team?
Sophia's team is playing right off of the jump next week. All right, we're gonna hold you to a recap of the game, Seattle Sea Dragons game. All right, thanks everybody for being here. Till next week. Stay tuned for more Flipside.